Saturday morning, I was curled up on the couch with a latte in one hand and a book in the other, How to Spot a Manipulator. Halfway through, I couldn't help but chuckle. The signs listed in the book reminded me of certain people. One person in particular, never mind. No need to let that ruin my mood. Just as I was about to put down the book, my phone rang. I glanced down and saw Mom flashing on the screen. "Hi, Mom." I answered. "Janet. Your dad and I talked it over and we've decided to buy you a new car." Her voice brimmed with excitement, as if she had just won the lottery. I nearly spit out my coffee. "Wait, what? Seriously?" "Of course. You've had that car for almost 7 years. It's time for an upgrade. You're an independent, professional woman. You need a car that reflects that," she declared with absolute conviction. I couldn't help but laugh. "So what you're saying is I need a C-level ride to match my very 9 to 5 job? At the very least, something reliable. Something that makes you feel powerful." She paused, then added in a tone laced with meaning, "Besides, we wouldn't want your boyfriend getting the wrong idea and thinking this is some kind of perk for him." That caught my attention. "Mom, what's that supposed to mean?" "Well, your father feels that Mark seems more interested in your financial situation than in you." A sinking feeling settled in my stomach. My parents rarely commented on my relationships unless they had real concerns. I glanced at my phone and saw a new deposit in my bank account, $60,000. I knew they meant well. They had always been generous, never hesitating to make my life more comfortable. But this time, something felt different. "Janet, this money is for you," Mom emphasized. "Buy whatever car you want, however you want. Just make sure the decision is yours." "Got it," I murmured. But an uneasy feeling crept over me. After hanging up, I hesitated for a moment before deciding to tell Mark. He was my boyfriend after all. Things between us had always been fine. A few minor disagreements here and there, but overall he treated me well enough. I sent him a quick text. "My parents decided to buy me a new car." Less than a minute later, my phone rang. "Janet, are you serious? Your parents are way too generous." Mark sounded even more excited than I was. "What kind of car are you thinking? Want me to help you pick one out?" His reaction was so immediate it caught me off guard. I laughed, keeping my tone light. "Haven't decided yet. Gotta check out my options first. Let's go to a dealership this weekend." "I'll come with you," he suggested eagerly. "Sure," I said, keeping my voice casual. For a few seconds, there was silence on the other end of the line. Then Mark's tone shifted slightly, becoming cautious. "So, have you thought about whose name the car will be registered under?" My brows immediately furrowed. "Of course mine," I blurted out. He hesitated, then let out a small laugh. "I was just asking, you know. Naturally it should be in your name. But some people opt for joint ownership since, it's a future shared asset." "Future?" I raised an eyebrow. "Are we married already?" "Well, no, but I mean we're headed in that direction, right?" His voice wavered slightly before he added, "Plus, if the car was under my name, there's a chance we could get a discount." I let out a soft laugh. My tone calm but sharp. "So you think this reward for my success from my parents should somehow become your asset?" The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. A few seconds later, he forced a chuckle. "Come on, I was just joking. Don't take it so seriously. Anyway, let's hit the dealership this weekend. You should get something impressive. You're successful now and your car should match your status." "Sure," I replied, my voice neutral. After hanging up, I stared at my phone, lost in thought. I had never been the type to overthink things. But something about that conversation left me unsettled. My parents rarely voiced opinions about my boyfriends, yet this time they both sensed something off. And Mark's reaction, for the first time I found myself seriously considering a question. Was this car truly my own reward? Or was it just another piece in someone else's game? As his words, "a future shared asset," lingered in my mind, my thoughts drifted back to our past. From the day we met to the subtle changes in our relationship, had we really reached a point where I needed to reevaluate everything? I leaned back against the couch, closing my eyes as memories surfaced, memories of the charming, polished man who had once walked into my life so effortlessly. The way Mark and I met had all the makings of a movie scene. I was at a coffee shop, juggling work emails, when my latte nearly spilled all over me. And then a warm hand steadied the cup just in time. "Oh there," a voice said. Almost turned that coffee into a fashion statement. I looked up and saw a well-dressed man, his smile easy and confident, his gaze warm. He had that "I just saved your day" look about him. I chuckled, thanked him, and was about to return to my work. But he wasn't in a hurry to leave. Finance? He asked, glancing at the spreadsheet on my screen. Marketing, I replied absent-mindedly. A marketing expert. So, tell me what's the perfect one-liner that'll convince you to let me buy you a coffee? I couldn't help but smile. His approach wasn't particularly smooth, but it wasn't sleazy either. There was a quiet confidence to him, just enough charm without being overbearing. I hadn't thought much of it at the time, just that he seemed interesting. So I nodded. All right, since you've piqued my curiosity, go ahead. So we sat down and talked for a while. He told me he worked in real estate sales, that he was passionate about his career, loved chasing ambitious goals, and enjoyed being in control. Back then, I hadn't thought much about the deeper meaning behind his words. I just saw him as a driven, goal-oriented man. Looking back, that was probably what first drew me to him. He seemed like a winner. Or at the very least, he knew exactly how to look like one. We started dating soon after. Mark was attentive to the point of perfection, always appearing at just the right moments with just the right gestures. A hot drink after a late-night shift. A warm presence when I was sick. He played the role of the perfect boyfriend flawlessly. More importantly, he never brought up money. Unlike some men who fuss over splitting bills or subtly hint at the woman covering expenses, Mark was the opposite. He always insisted on paying, never hesitated to buy gifts, and made me feel like he was a man who didn't just take, he provided. "Don't worry, I can take care of you," he once said with such confidence that it almost touched me. But now, looking back, were these gestures truly acts of genuine kindness? Or were they calculated investments with an expected return? 6 months into our relationship, my parents invited him to dinner. That night, for the first time, I caught a glimpse of Mark's real attitude toward money. My parents had never been the meddling type, but they liked to understand the people I dated. When they asked about his job, Mark spoke with his usual self-assurance, boasting about his achievements in real estate. He even joked, "Once my career is solid, I'll be able to buy Janet a big house." My father nodded and casually asked, "Where do you live now?" Mark hesitated just for a split second before responding with a smile. "I'm renting at the moment, but I'm already looking for a place to buy." My mother nodded politely, and the conversation naturally drifted elsewhere. But I noticed his fingers tightening around his wine glass. Mark didn't like discussing his finances, especially not around my parents. Later, on the way home, he asked, almost offhandedly, "Do you think your parents have an issue with me not owning a place?" "Not at all," I reassured him. "They were just making conversation." He paused before adding quietly, "If we're planning a future together, things like buying a house should probably be a joint decision." Of course, I had replied easily. It's a shared future after all. I hadn't thought much of it then. But now I wondered, was that his first attempt at feeling out my stance on finances? The truth was, his probing about this car hadn't started today. A few months ago, he had tested the waters in a different way. We were casually chatting about future plans when I mentioned, "Once work settles down this year, I might get a new car." "What kind of car?" His interest peaked instantly. "Probably a BMW or a Tesla," I had said. "Something better for long-distance travel." He nodded, then seemingly offhand asked, "Are you planning to finance it or pay in full?" "Full," I answered without much thought. Dealing with loans is a hassle. For a split second, his expression shifted just slightly. At the time, I hadn't given it much thought. But now I realized he had been assessing something. He had been measuring me, calculating exactly how much financial power I had. At this point in my memories, my emotions grew complicated. I had always believed our relationship was built on mutual attraction and support. But now, looking back, every step he had taken seemed meticulously calculated. Had his initial kindness been genuine, or was it an investment strategy? Had his attentiveness been unconditional, or was it designed to earn my trust? And now, he was becoming increasingly interested in my finances, so much so that he outright asked whose name the car should be registered under. For the first time, I began to realize that this man might have a clearer agenda than I had ever imagined. Saturday morning, I stood outside my apartment waiting for Mark to pick me up. The night before, he had reminded me, "Babe, make sure to get up early so we can hit the dealership before it gets crowded." He seemed more excited about me buying a car than I was. Despite my growing doubts, I kept my demeanor casual. After all, this wasn't just about choosing a car, it was about testing Mark's real intentions. Right on time, he pulled up in front of my place. The moment I got in, he wasted no time. "Janet, have you decided what you want yet?" he asked eagerly. "Haven't made up my mind." A look around first, I replied lightly. Well, I think the BMW X5 is a great choice, classy, solid, and makes a statement, he said confidently as if he had already made the decision for me. I simply smiled, not engaging. Today, I was more interested in observing his reactions than in hearing him pitch a specific car. When we arrived at the dealership, Mark's excitement was practically spilling over. Oh wow, this one's great, 3.0T engine, powerful. Check out the interior, premium quality. Janet, you have to test drive this. It's the car for successful professionals. I watched him closely. The more he gushed over the cars, the more I wondered, was I buying this car? Or was he picking out his dream vehicle? As we were checking out the showroom, a sleek, well-dressed saleswoman approached us with a polished smile. Hi there, I'm Alice. Are you looking at a specific model today? Just as I was about to answer, Mark beat me to it. Alice? Wow, what a coincidence. I blinked, my gaze flicking between the two of them. Alice hesitated for half a second before composing herself. Mark, what brings you here? I'm here with my girlfriend, she's looking for a car. Mark grinned and casually draped an arm around my shoulder. Janet, this is, a friend I met through some mutual connections. She works here. I arched an eyebrow. Is that so? Alice's expression shifted subtly, just a flicker in her eyes before she slipped back into her professional demeanor. Yes, we've met a couple of times at a friend's gathering. Her tone was polite but carefully measured, keeping a certain distance. There was no warmth, no real familiarity, just enough to acknowledge that they had met. Which only made me suspect that their relationship wasn't as casual as she made it sound. I said nothing and simply nodded. Great. Then maybe you can help us with some recommendations. Alice immediately switched into sales mode, walking us through different models. I noticed that most of the cars she highlighted aligned more with Mark's taste than mine. When she finished her pitch, Mark leaned in, visibly thrilled. Janet, what do you think? That white BMW X5 is perfect for you. I tilted my head, considering my words. Kim, it's nice, I said, then smiled slightly. But I actually prefer the Tesla Model Y. Tesla? Mark frowned slightly, then forced a smile. Electric cars are nice, but they're not ideal for long trips. And Tesla's onboard system, it has its issues. I smiled faintly and asked, so, do you think the BMW X5 is a better fit for me or for you? He froze for a second before quickly waving his hands. Of course it's for you. I'm thinking about you. Really? I raised an eyebrow. Because I seem to recall you mentioning before that your dream car is an X5. His smile faltered just for a moment. Janet, you're overthinking this. I just think it's a great match for you. Alright, I said casually. Let's keep looking. But what happened next only solidified my suspicions. Alice suddenly asked, are you planning to pay in full or finance the car? I was just about to say full payment when Mark beat me to it. Financing, of course. It's the smarter choice. That way the leftover cash can be invested. My gaze on him cooled slightly. Invested? I repeated slowly. In what? Well, smarter financial opportunities, Mark said hesitantly. Think about it, Janet, if you buy the car outright, the money's gone. But if you finance it, we can use the extra cash for investments, real estate, stocks, things like that. I let out a short laugh and looked him straight in the eye. Whose money were you planning to invest? Mark's smile vanished completely. He hadn't expected me to call him out so directly. I took a deep breath, then said lightly, let's just keep looking for now. I'll think about my financing options later. Mark's expression tensed, but he wasn't ready to let it go. Janet, I'm just saying, financing really makes more sense. I'm not in a rush. I cut him off with an indifferent tone. Actually, I'm starting to get a headache. Let's call it a day. A headache. Did you not eat breakfast this morning? He asked, seizing the chance to shift the conversation. I smiled. Maybe. Probably just hungry. Let's go. He hesitated for a moment, as if weighing whether to push the topic further. But eventually he seemed to realize that his plan for today wasn't going anywhere. With visible reluctance, he nodded and followed me out of the dealership. But I had already seen enough. Today's test had made one thing crystal clear: Mark wasn't here to help me pick a car. He was here to ensure this purchase benefited him. And as for his connection with Alice, that, too, was looking far less innocent than he wanted me to believe. As I stared out the car window at the passing city streets, a quiet but firm realization settled inside me. This relationship might really be reaching its end. That day, as we walked out of the dealership, a seed of doubt had firmly planted itself in my mind. Mark's enthusiasm for my car was far greater than it should have been. More than that, he didn't just want to influence my choice, he wanted to convince me to finance it so there would be extra money left over. And when he spoke of investments, he had said we. I hadn't confronted him outright. But the truth was already rippling through me, shifting something deep inside. If he really just wanted to help me pick a car, why was he so eager for me to take out a loan? Why was he so concerned about where the money would go? And why did he seem even more invested than I was in whose name would be on the registration? I needed to get to the bottom of this. The next day I made an excuse not to see Mark and instead went to the bank alone. I wanted to get a professional opinion on auto loans. The bank manager, a sharp-looking woman in her 40s, listened patiently as I explained my situation. Then she smiled knowingly. To be honest, if you have enough cash on hand, financing a car isn't nearly as smart as your boyfriend made it sound, she said. A car is a depreciating asset. Unlike a house, it won't appreciate in value. So, when you take out a loan, the interest is just adding to your overall cost. I leaned forward. So, are there people who deliberately choose to finance a car? Of course, she nodded. But usually it's because they want to use the leftover cash for something else, stocks, investments, or just to have money they can freely access. A cold realization washed over me. Her words described Mark's logic exactly. He wasn't trying to make my financial burden lighter, he was trying to keep my cash liquid so I'd have the opportunity to use it. A chill ran down my spine. That afternoon Mark called. His voice was extra sweet. Hey Janet. You must be tired today. Want to grab dinner tonight? Sure, I said, keeping my tone light. Oh, by the way, I stopped by the bank today to ask about the loan. There was a split-second pause before his voice turned eager. Really? So? Sounds like a great idea now, right? I resisted the urge to roll my eyes and let out a small sigh instead. The bank said that if I financed the car, I'd have an extra 20 grand in cash flow. Honestly, it is kind of tempting, of course it is. Mark's excitement was instant. I told you loans are a smart move. So have you decided? When are you going to finalize it? I smiled, but it wasn't out of amusement. Not yet, I said, drawing out my words. The bank mentioned that once the loan is approved, the extra money would be completely at my disposal. I just don't know what to do with it yet. I'm worried I might end up spending it on something unnecessary. There was a brief silence. 2 seconds, maybe 3. Then his voice came back, carefully casual. Well, you could just hold on to it for now. Or maybe look into some investment opportunities. There was. From the very beginning, his interest wasn't in the car, it was in the money. I decided to push a little further. Actually, I said thoughtfully, I was thinking if there really is a good investment opportunity, maybe I could lend you a portion of it? Didn't you mention a real estate project recently? Silence. Not just hesitation, dead silence. Then after a moment he let out a forced laugh. Oh, that. I was just talking, you know. Investments aren't that easy. You should just focus on buying the car first. We can figure out the rest later. I caught the word immediately. I echoed, amusement laced in my voice. Mark backpedaled so fast I almost felt secondhand embarrassment. I mean you. I just meant I can help you plan things. But I had already heard enough. This wasn't a slip of the tongue. It wasn't just casual conversation. That wasn't an accident. That was a plan. A script. One he had been carefully executing from the very beginning. That night I made an excuse about a headache and skipped dinner with Mark. Instead, I sat down and started going through our conversations from the past few months, chat logs, bank transfers, and the times he had casually mentioned investment opportunities. A pattern emerged. 3 months ago he had casually remarked, if you have some extra cash, it might be worth trying the stock market. 2 months ago he mentioned the real estate market looks promising right now, too bad I don't have enough capital. A month ago he asked, have you ever thought about doing something with your savings instead of just letting them sit there? Bit by bit, he had been introducing the idea of investment into our conversations, guiding me toward his so-called financial strategy. This wasn't just an innocent suggestion. It was a carefully constructed plan. And this car? It was his way in. If I took out a loan, he could logically persuade me to invest the leftover cash. If I bought the X5, he could justify driving it under the guise of helping me out. And if I registered the car under his name, well, then he would have secured a tangible asset for himself. All of this, the thoughtful boyfriend act, the financial advice, the future planning, wasn't love. It was manipulation. The next day I made a decision. I wouldn't expose him immediately. Instead, I would flip the game. Let him believe everything was going according to his plan. Then, when he was at his most confident, I'd make sure he crashed hard. I called him, deliberately adding hesitation to my voice. Mark, I've been thinking you might be right. Financing the car could be a better option. The excitement in his voice was instant. Really? Janet, you finally see it my way? I let out a small laugh. And well, I've also been thinking about what you said about investing. Maybe we should consider it. His tone immediately softened into something warm and reassuring. I knew you were smart. Don't worry. Babe will make sure everything is planned out perfectly. Perfect. Let him think he's winning. Over the next few days, I quietly gathered evidence. I recorded our conversations about investments and money. I saved chat messages where he hinted at his financial struggles. I even consulted a lawyer friend, asking how the law viewed financial manipulation in relationships. Everything was falling into place. Mark. He was still blissfully unaware that the game had shifted and that he was no longer the one pulling the strings. Tonight, it would all come to an end. Mark had invited me over for dinner. Janet, he said eagerly, slicing into his steak, I checked the bank rates. The auto loan interest is still low. We should finalize it soon. Keeping that cash in hand means we'll be ready for even bigger opportunities. I swirled my wine glass slowly, pretending to consider. Chaman, what do you think we should invest in? The real estate market has some solid opportunities right now, Mark said, setting down his knife and fork, his tone shifting into something almost professional. If you've got $100,000 in cash, we could make a short-term investment 3 to 6 months and the returns might be much higher than you'd expect. There was again. I smiled, pretending to hesitate. But I don't really understand this stuff. Investing sounds risky. You don't have to worry, Mark assured me, his confidence unwavering. I can handle the decisions. Once we start making money, our future will be even more comfortable. Step by step, he was leading me deeper into his carefully laid financial trap. But what he didn't know was that I had already flipped the board. I set my utensils down and met his gaze, the smile slowly fading from my lips. Mark, let me ask you something. He looked up, a flicker of caution in his eyes. What? If I buy a car but register it under your name, how would you feel about that? He blinked, caught off guard for a split second before flashing an easy smile. What's the difference? I mean, we're going to be living together eventually, right? It doesn't matter whose name is on it. I watched him closely, my voice cool. And what if I finance the car? Take out another $100,000 in cash and transfer it straight into your account? Would that make you even happier? The air between us turned ice cold. His smile froze. For the first time, I saw it, that brief, flickering moment of panic. He recovered quickly, letting out a forced laugh. Janet, what are you even saying? When did I ever ask you to give me money? You didn't, I said, pulling out my phone. Not directly. I pressed play. If you finance the car, we can use the leftover money for investments, real estate, stocks. Keeping that cash in hand means we'll be ready for even bigger opportunities. We can make these decisions together. His own voice filled the room, clear, unmistakable, laced with that same practiced nonchalance he always used when suggesting things. His face drained of color. Janet, you recorded me? I tilted my head slightly, studying his expression. Of course. In fact, I've recorded a lot of our conversations. About investments. About loans. About your little plans for us. His expression twisted, shock melting into anger. What the hell is this? You don't trust me? I exhaled slowly, keeping my voice steady. You know, Mark, I used to think you were a decent guy. Until I realized that what interests you most about me isn't me, it's my money. That's bullshit, he snapped, his composure slipping. I leaned back, arms crossed. You tested me at every step. First asking if I'd pay in full or take out a loan. Then nudging me toward the BMW X5, your dream car, not mine. And slowly, so subtly, introducing the idea of shared investments. You're smart, Mark. But your biggest mistake. You underestimated me. Mark's face completely fell. Seeing that I wasn't budging, he quickly switched tactics, slipping back into his caring boyfriend persona. He sighed, reaching for my hand. Janet, you've misunderstood me. I was only thinking about our future. I never intended to deceive you. I gently pulled my hand away, my voice as calm as ever. Is that so? Then why were you more excited about the car than I was? Why were you pushing so hard for the loan? And why did you never ask if I was actually interested in investing? Janet, don't do this. Our relationship, our relationship? I let out a short laugh. Do you really think there's anything left between us? The last remnants of his fake smile crumbled. He stared at me, and in that moment his expression shifted first from persuasion to irritation and finally to anger. So this is how you're treating me, huh? His voice rose in frustration. After everything I've done for you, you're just going to throw it all away over some investment talk? Be honest, you've been looking for an excuse to dump me, haven't you? Oh, so what you're saying is, if I refuse to lend you money, that makes me heartless? Cut the act. He let out a bitter laugh. You've always thought you were smarter than everyone else. Haven't you? You look down on me because your family has money. That's what this is really about, isn't it? I stood up, looking him dead in the eyes. My voice was eerily steady, as if I were discussing the weather. You know what, Mark? I really should have seen through you sooner. You're angry because you assumed I'd follow the path you laid out for me. You thought you had me figured out. But you were wrong. I picked up my bag and headed for the door. Janet, don't you dare walk out that door. He shouted. His voice laced with growing hostility. You really think you'll find a man better than me? I paused, turned back to look at him and smiled. Whether I do or not doesn't matter. What does matter is that I'm done wasting my time on a man who only saw me as an ATM. Then, without a second glance, I walked out of his apartment, leaving him and our so-called relationship behind for good. 3 days after the breakup, I received a message from Mark's mother. I had assumed cutting ties with him meant cutting ties with everything, but clearly, his family wasn't planning to let me go so easily. Lucy Spencer. Janet, I know you've been busy and I heard about your breakup with Mark. I just think it's such a shame for you two to throw away what you had. Could we talk? I stared at the message, unable to suppress a cold smirk. Lucy had never truly cared about me. Her attitude had always been polite, yet distant, like she was entertaining a business transaction rather than welcoming me as part of the family. And now, suddenly she wanted to talk? Her motives were crystal clear. But I wasn't in a hurry to shut her down. Instead, I replied with calculated indifference. Mrs. Spencer, is there something specific you'd like to discuss? Less than 2 minutes later, my phone rang. The moment I picked up the call, a choked-up voice came through the line. Janet, I don't know what to do anymore. Wow. The dramatics were straight out of a soap opera. Take your time, Mrs. Spencer, I said, keeping my voice neutral. Mark, she sniffled. He's been in such a terrible state these past few days. He's lost weight, he looks absolutely miserable. Her voice wavered, heavy with emotion. He really loves you. Janet. He's not a bad person. He just cares too much about his pride, and that's why he said things that made you misunderstand him. Oh? I raised an eyebrow. Is that so? And do you happen to know exactly what he said to me? There was a brief silence on the other end before she let out another dramatic sigh. He told me he knows he was wrong. He regrets everything. He's been locked in his room, not eating, not drinking. He even took time off work. Janet, sweetheart, I know you have a kind heart. Can't you give him another chance? Not eating, losing weight, taking leave from work. Please. I knew Mark too well. If there was one thing he'd never do, it was suffer. Even in heartbreak, he'd at most be furious or bitter, but starve himself over a breakup. That was just laughable. His mother was laying it on thick, but I wasn't about to call her bluff just yet. Instead, I asked coolly, if he feels that bad, why hasn't he called me himself? He's afraid you won't answer. She said quickly. He doesn't know how to face you. But he truly regrets everything. He's just too proud to apologize first. I let out a small laugh. Mrs. Spencer. I didn't break up with Mark over some misunderstanding. We split because we don't share the same values. But you two loved each other. She argued. Janet, men make mistakes sometimes, but if their heart is in the right place, they deserve forgiveness. You were together for 2 years, don't you think it's a shame to throw that away? Love isn't charity, I said calmly. If someone uses love as a tool to take instead of give, then they don't deserve to be forgiven. Mark isn't like that. She insisted. He just wanted to build a better future for you. And he said the wrong things in the process. I'd had enough. It was time to cut to the chase. I know you didn't call me just to beg me to take Mark back, I said flatly. Silence. Then finally she got to the real reason for this call. Janet, I wanted to ask you for a favor. Go on. She hesitated, then lowered her voice as if she were about to say something truly sensitive. You were looking at cars, weren't you? Mark mentioned that you were planning to finance one. There was. Finally. A smirk tugged at the corner of my lips as I patiently waited for her to continue. "I'm not trying to interfere in your decisions," she sighed, her voice laced with feigned helplessness. "But Mark has been struggling financially. He's in a bit of debt, and if it's possible, could you help him? Just a little?" But there was. Her goal was never reconciliation. It was money. Feigning concern, I asked, "How much does Mark owe?" Around 100,000, she admitted, her tone hesitant. "Strange." I mused. "Mark told me he could afford a car." She let out an awkward chuckle. "Men, they have their pride. They don't like admitting when they're struggling." "And how did he end up in debt?" I pressed. There was a brief pause before she carefully said, "He made an investment and it didn't work out." I sounded just the right amount of surprised. "What kind of investment?" He hadn't expected me to keep digging. Her voice wavered. "Well, something related to real estate. Anyway, he's just really upset about it. He's trying so hard to recover from the loss." And there was. From the very beginning. This had all been a setup, a slow, calculated path leading straight to this moment. The moment where I was expected to fix his problems. I dropped the act. My voice turned cool. "Mrs. Spencer, I respect you, which is why it'll be clear I will not lend Mark money. And I will never get back together with him." She went silent for half a second, then her voice shot up in pitch. "Janet, I'm not trying to pressure you. He's really struggling right now after 2 years together. Are you really this heartless?" "Relationships go both ways," I said evenly. "I've already done more than enough. And I refuse to be used." Her tone turned sharp, the fake warmth peeling away. "What is that supposed to mean? Are you saying your feelings were never real? Didn't you love him?" I laughed softly. "Love is mutual. Not one person giving while the other just takes." There was a tense pause. Then in a cold voice she hissed, "Janet, you're heartless." "No," I said calmly. "Heartless is treating love like a financial transaction." And with that I ended the call. Without hesitation I blocked Mark's number. His social media. His mother's contacts. I had given them every chance to walk away with dignity. But from start to finish all they had ever wanted was money. And I was no longer the kind of woman who could be manipulated or used. For a moment I thought the ordeal was finally over. I was wrong. Mark and his mother weren't ready to let go of their personal ATM. Just as I was starting to relax, a new message popped up on my phone. It was from an unknown number. "Mark, Janet, I know you're still upset, but I swear I've changed. I regret everything. Please just give me one more chance." I let out a quiet laugh and tossed my phone onto the table. So, he was switching tactics. Now he was playing the devoted, remorseful man, his final attempt at getting what he wanted. His grand romantic gesture campaign continued relentlessly over the next few days. He sent messages dripping with nostalgia. "Janet, I know I messed up. He been thinking about us nonstop. I don't want to lose you. Do you remember our first trip together? You were so happy back then. I ordered your favorite caramel macchiato and had it delivered to your office. Please don't refuse it, Janet, it'll change. I swear. Just meet me once, let me apologize in person." The messages poured in one after another, painting him as a heartbroken man suffering in the aftermath of love lost. If I hadn't already seen through him, I might have found it convincing. But I knew better. This wasn't love. It was manipulation with a new coat of paint. And I was done playing defense. I decided to flip the script. I sent a single message. "Are you really willing to change?" Not even 10 seconds later he replied. "Of course. Anything, Janet. Just give me one more chance." I smirked. Hook, line, and sinker. "All right. Let's meet this weekend. I want to hear what you have to say." His response was instant. "Really? Janet, you have no idea how much this means to me. I promise I won't let you down." He was giddy, convinced his plan was working. What he didn't know was that I'd already set the stage. Saturday afternoon, I arrived at an upscale cafe 10 minutes early. I selected a window seat, placed my phone on the table, and discreetly activated my smart recording pen. This time, I would get the truth. On record. Mark arrived shortly after. He looked thinner than before, probably an intentional touch to sell the miserable and broken act. His hair was slightly disheveled and he wore a weary yet hopeful smile. "Janet," his eyes shimmered with feigned longing the moment he saw me. I gestured to the seat across from me. "Sit." He sighed dramatically as he settled in, his expression wounded yet sincere. I've been thinking a lot about us, he started, his voice heavy with carefully crafted regret. This was all my fault. I let my ego get in the way. I just wanted to build a better future for us and I made the wrong choices. I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. Go on, spin your story. I know I did things that upset you. But Janet, I never wanted to use you. I only wanted stability for us. I raised an eyebrow. Then why did you push me to take out a car loan? He let out a sheepish laugh. Well, I just thought financing would help keep things more flexible, you know? But I get it now, I was wrong. I really was. I set down my coffee cup, tilting my head slightly. And what about your investment plans? His smile faltered for a split second, just long enough for me to catch it. Then he quickly switched to his innocent act. Oh, that. He let out a short chuckle. That was just an idea, Janet. I was never actually planning to use your money. I let out a small sigh and, in a soft voice, said, honestly, I don't think our relationship should have ended so quickly either. The moment those words left my lips, his eyes lit up, his entire posture shifting forward eagerly. You think so too? Janet, we are meant for each other. I nodded slowly, deliberately hesitating, letting my words land just right. I've been thinking if I could find the right investment opportunity, maybe it really would make our future more stable. For the briefest moment, his eyes flashed with excitement, a telltale flicker of greed just barely concealed behind his usual concerned boyfriend act. Really? He struggled to contain his enthusiasm, forcing his tone to remain calm. And what kind of investment are you thinking about? I gave him a small, knowing smile. Oh, I don't understand investing at all. I let out a light laugh. That's why I was thinking. Maybe someone who could manage it for me? I watched him carefully. The second the words left my mouth, I saw that hungry gleam in his eyes. He was trying to play it cool, but the anticipation was undeniable. Janet, do you really trust me? He asked, voice laced with false humility. I mean, if you really wanted me to, of course I'd help you manage your investments. But only if you're comfortable with it. I'd never pressure you. Your performance is Oscar-worthy. But every single word he just said was now recorded. We chatted for a bit longer, him continuing his act. Me luring him further in. Then it was time to drop the bomb. Oh, by the way, Mark, I said casually, stirring my coffee. I actually have a friend in finance. He told me there are investment firms that specifically offer short-term capital loans for people struggling with debt. Mark's smile froze. Oh. His voice was a little too forced, too wary. I leaned forward slightly, my tone almost playful. So tell me, how much do you owe? His fingers tightened around his coffee cup. You, who told you that? Your mother, I said with a soft smile. His face went pale. The corner of his mouth twitched. His usual smooth facade cracking. Janet, you don't understand. My finances are fine, Mark. My voice turned cool, cutting through his excuses. Stop pretending. How much? He sat there, stiff as a statue, his face cycling through shock, panic, and anger. A few tense seconds passed. Then finally 100,000. His voice was barely a whisper. I tilted my head. And you can't pay it back, can you? His jaw clenched. His fists tightened against the table. I pressed further. So all of this, dating me, planning a future, pushing me to take out a loan, convincing me to invest, was just about covering that debt. His eyes burned into mine, but this time there was no fake warmth. Just bare frustration and resentment. Then he snapped. You think you're so smart? He hissed through gritted teeth. You come from money, you'd never understand what it's like. I stared at him, unfazed. So your whole plan was to milk me for money in the name of love? His lips curled into a cold smirk, his pretense shattering completely. Well, he sneered, his voice dripping with bitterness. You always thought you were clever. How did it take you this long to figure it out? I let out a slow exhale, then without breaking eye contact, pulled out my phone. I tapped the screen and pressed play. Mark's own voice spilled into the air between us. If you finance the car, we can use the extra cash for investments. It'll be more flexible for us long term. I can help manage your investments. His entire face drained of color. Panic flashed in his eyes. Janet, his voice wavered. I smiled. Thanks, Mark. This conversation has been very helpful. His hands gripped the table, his jaw tightening, his breath shaky. He knew. He was screwed. Next, I continued, sliding my phone into my bag, comes the legal action. Mark's face darkened instantly, rage flickering behind his wide eyes. He looked like a man who had just realized the hunter had become the prey. The atmosphere in the cafe shifted. Mark's face was ashen, his fingers gripping the edge of the table so tightly that his knuckles turned white, like a man on the verge of completely losing control. "Janet. What the hell do you think you're doing?" His voice was sharp, bordering on hostile. "Why the hell did you record me?" I smiled, calm and unbothered, and slipped my phone back into my bag. Taking my time, I lifted my coffee cup and took a slow sip before answering. "Oh, I said casually. Just a little insurance. Oh, and in case you're thinking about pulling any tricks, I've already backed up the recordings. If you try anything, you'll send them straight to the police." His pupils dilated for a split second. "The police?" His voice wavered, then spiked with incredulity. "Janet, are you insane? I was just trying to fix things with you and you want to involve the law." I let out a cold chuckle. "Fix things? Don't insult my intelligence. You never wanted me. You wanted my money." His teeth clenched, his jaw tightening as rage flickered across his face. Then suddenly his expression twisted into something darker, an eerie, mocking smile. Well, so you think you've won?" His voice dropped, his tone turning venomous. "You really think you can scare me?" I set my cup down and met his glare heat-in. "Of course not," I said smoothly. "After all, you've got nothing left to lose. Except your already crumbling finances, your rapidly declining credit score, and what's left of your so-called career." His eyes widened in pure shock. You investigated me." I shrugged. "I may have done some digging. Before I had even agreed to meet Mark, I had already dug deep into his financial situation. And what I found? It was uglier than I had expected. His debts weren't just $100,000. His mother had conveniently underestimated his financial disaster. His credit card debt alone was nearing $300,000, with overdue payments that had already flagged him as a high-risk borrower. He owed money to 2 private lenders, totaling nearly $18,000, thanks to a failed real estate gamble that had spiraled out of control with compounding interest. On paper, he pretended to be a successful professional, but in reality he was teetering on the edge of financial ruin. I wasn't the first woman he had tried to manipulate. While searching through social media posts from one of his ex-girlfriends, I found disturbing patterns. In his past relationship, he had proposed similar investment opportunities to his ex. When they broke up, she found herself being harassed by debt collectors because she had co-signed a credit card for him, which he had maxed out and abandoned. He had never been looking for love, he had been looking for financial leverage. Reading through it all, I had felt an eerie chill. He wasn't just a manipulator. He was a serial scammer. "Mark," I exhaled, tilting my head slightly as I studied his expression. "Tell me, do you think all women are idiots?" A single muscle twitched in his jaw. He remained silent for a few seconds before muttering through clenched teeth, "You can't ruin me." I let out a soft, amused laugh. I already had. I pulled out my phone again, scrolling to a drafted email. "Oh, by the way, remember that high-end real estate investment you bragged about?" His face twitched. "I reached out to a few real investors," I continued lightly. "And they told me that you don't have the capital to get into any legitimate projects. In fact, you don't even qualify for a down payment." His face drained of all color. "What the hell did you do?" His voice was barely above a whisper. "Oh, nothing much." I smiled sweetly. "But if you even think about trying to harass me again or, let's say, spread any false rumors about me, I will let your creditors know exactly what you've been up to." His breathing grew shallow. His fists clenched. He looked like a man trapped in a burning building with no exits. "You wouldn't dare," he said, voice low and shaky. I smiled again, standing up and tossing some cash on the table. "Try me." His face turned ghostly pale in an instant. Because he knew exactly what kind of loan sharks he had borrowed from. If they found out he had a potential source of money, his life would become much worse than it already was. He stared at me, his eyes a mixture of rage, desperation, and just for a fleeting second pleading. "Janet, we did love each other once." His voice was hoarse, as if he was grasping at the last straw. "Shut up." My voice was ice cold as I cut him off. "There was never an us." His jaw clenched so hard I could see the muscles twitch. His breaths came out harsh and uneven. Then, without another word, he stood up abruptly, yanked his chair back, and kicked the table leg with full force before storming out of the cafe. I watched him go, his figure retreating in a haze of frustration and humiliation. But I felt nothing. No regret. No sympathy. No second thoughts. Because this man would never change. He would always blame others instead of owning up to his own failures. That very day I contacted my lawyer. I filed an official harassment and defamation report, compiling every text, every voice message and the full audio recordings I had collected. I also had my lawyer draft a cease and desist letter. Once this letter was sent, it meant that if Mark ever tried to contact me again or spread even a single rumor, I could sue him immediately. After reviewing my case, my lawyer smiled and said, "You handled this brilliantly. You took control before he could. Don't worry, the law is on your side." Hearing that, I finally let out a breath I didn't realize I had been holding. It was over. I had completely shut down this manipulative financial predator of a relationship. That night when I got home, I pulled out my phone and did what I should have done long ago. I erased every trace of Mark from my life. I deleted our entire chat history. I blocked his number and every social media account tied to him. I wiped out every single photo of him from my phone. And as I sat there staring at the blank screen, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: peace. Goodbye, Mark. Your manipulation failed. Your game is over. I didn't see Mark again after that. But months later, I heard the news he had been exposed by multiple women. Victims came forward. A full-scale investigation was launched. And in the end, Mark was convicted of fraud and sentenced to 10 years in prison. His mother even reached out to me, begging me to help her son. I refused. Mark deserved every single consequence that came his way. And as for me, I walked away from that toxic relationship and rebuilt my life on my own terms. I bought the car I wanted, a Tesla Model Y, paid in full. I was promoted to marketing director, seizing new career opportunities. I reconnected with real friends, people who actually cared about me. But most importantly, I learned how to truly love myself. I would never let anyone manipulate me again. This was my story. If you've ever been in a similar situation, what would you have done? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you liked this video, don't forget to like and subscribe for more real-life stories every day. See you tomorrow.